Pop Culture Pastor.
So, Cody, one of my favorite things about Ted Lasso has been this. There's the show, and then there's this like secret other side of the show that you only understand, it only entertains you if you're a Kansan.
Mm-hmm.
That's been one of my favorite things about watching this show is there are things about him, things he says about home, about Kansas. And then in this episode,
His love of barbecue sauce.
Barbecue sauce. I mean, there's just things that you just have to live here and have lived here in Kansas to understand and find entertaining and funny. And then in this episode, it's the main point of the episode. It's on display in the character of his mom.
Dottie
Lasso, who like takes center stage in this episode. And I've watched this episode 3 times now.
Wowzers.
Yeah. And even though like she's not to rush forward here, but she's completely a vehicle to get Ted into this mind space and to give him some closure and to figure out exactly, like, it's funny that Dottie shows up, Mom shows up, and by the end of the episode, we know exactly what's wrong with Ted. We know exactly what his problem is. They don't say it, but when we get there, we'll point it out. The conclusion is we know exactly what's been affecting Ted. And it's an obvious thing when you lose somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So his mom in this episode is just, for Kansans, it's delightful and aggravating. And
I was triggered at times.
there's a little bit of our mom in Dottie Lasso. Everyone's mom here. There's just something about Midwestern / Kansas people where they got something on their mind they won't tell you. They're good manners to a fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just to skip forward in time a little bit because we're talking about this right now, but the whole sleeping on the couch thing. I think I go through this with my mother every time she comes to our house.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then I guess I'll sleep on the floor and nobody will sleep in the bed.
I don't want to put you out.
I don't want to put you out. Yeah. It's the international language of the Kansan, by the way. I don't want to put you out.
So for family, I will do this. Now, like, I've had friends come over and I'm like, we have a nice blow-up air mattress.
Yes.
I will let them know, like, I've slept on it before. It's not that bad. And probably just because, like if it's my family or my wife's family, oh yeah, we're offering them the nicer thing, which would be like our bed, and we would take their mattress. But friends, I'll give you a nice air mattress to sleep on, and I will like build it up because I don't want you to think that I think you're pond scum, because I don't think you're pond scum.
So, yeah.
It gets into the headspace of me too well.
Ted's mom is just, there's a lot of familiarity for us Kansans in this, and probably a lot of Midwestern type people, as I'm betting these personality points go beyond the borders of Kansas. But I have to tell you, watching this episode was delightful. It was just delightful and emotional. And because we'll talk about it as we go on, it's not that, Kansans seems like it's coming from a place of the heart. And it is. Kansans are some of the nicest people I've ever met. I've been all over the place. I've only lived in Kansas, but I've been everywhere. I stayed in New York for almost a month one time, and I've been around in different places. And what I can tell you is that it's true. Kansans are nice people, and they would generally, I've seen more strangers that would give you whatever they had just to be nice.
Yeah.
It's just the way it generally is here. And of course, there's always bad apples, but for the most part, There's no place you could be stranded that would be better than Kansas in the United States, in my opinion, from my experience.
Yeah. And if there's someone just as nice, they're probably in a neighboring state in the Midwest. So
Yeah. And the funny thing is if you live in Kansas, you know exactly what you find out in this episode, that niceness is a front. Not that they're bad underneath it, but all their brokenness, they just hide it.
because that's the polite thing to do.
And
don't want to burden others with it.
yeah, if it's just if you just casually meet a Kansan, they just seem like the nicest people ever. But when you live with them, it gets aggravating, as we also see in this episode. The niceness, the niceness in quotation marks gets aggravating because we know them. We know there's something under the surface that they want to say. And so that's kind of how I wanted to intro this episode, because this whole story leads to what happens at the end until the truth finally gets out. So yeah, this is an episode where they're Richmond's getting ready for their big matchup with Manchester City.
Man City,
Mancurians, not Manchesterians or Manchurians or whatever you think it is. It's Mancurians, as Ted points out.
I would have been wrong.
Me too. Mancurians? What? That doesn't make sense. I love that they have their own song, Manchester City, and then that they sing Blue Moon, much like I was reminded of how the Boston Red Sox sing the Neil Diamond song.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah.
Get out of here, Red Sox.
Are the Boston Red Sox the most like European baseball team in the United States? Would we agree that they're the most European professional sports team, the way they sing a classic song together that really has no tie to who they are?
Yeah, although I feel the Chiefs back in the day, before it was a bad thing to play any Gary Glitter, they really rocked that song.
I forgot about Gary Glitter and Hey. They were they played it on kickoffs, right?
They did.
Yeah.
And they got into it.
Yeah. And then, we found out all that stuff about Gary Glitter, and we were like, all right, we should probably retire that. Nobody really plays that anymore.
I know.
So we should really have an episode of the Big Pod about separating the art from the artists, but someday.
Not today.
And which ones you'd separate, you'd be okay with it, which ones you're not.
Oof.
Yeah.
We're coming up to a point where we might actually have to do that with The Flash, but
yeah, it's going to be a topic of conversation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan Majors too in Marvel, because that's going to come to a head at some point. They're going to have to make a decision. But anyways, we're here to talk about Ted Lasso. So they're getting ready for this big game with Manchester City. The game happens, and really the story is about, spoilers, Richmond wins.
What?
On heroism by
Jamie Tart. Do.
Yeah, and Jamie really has a great arc. Let's start with Jamie. Should we start with Jamie?
Jamie's the best.
What's wrong with Jamie? We get into this episode and we see that he's struggling.
Even though he just won Conference Player of the Month.
Yeah, they start off in the press conference room where he's clearly down and claims the one goal he scored was he was trying to pass it. It shouldn't count. I feel bad. I'm sorry. I apologize to the kids.
Someone needed to apologize to the kids for once.
And we see that he's not right. And going home, he's got the history with his dad. We find out he hasn't talked with his dad since the season 2 episode where he punches his dad.
Oi. At
Wembley, where he comes into the locker room to talk trash and be drunk. And that was the episode. That was a great episode where Roy hugs Jamie. That was the start of the Roy Jamie bro bond. But Jamie's clearly struggling. And do we think it's because I mean, maybe it's a combination. I don't know that they really spell this out, but maybe it's a combination of the nervousness, the going home, the thinking he's going to be there playing in front of his dad, that he's not going to be received well. But also, Jamie's heart is changing. And he doesn't have that burning hatred for his dad that he did. He's finding that time and distance is causing maybe a softening of that. And not that he's forgiven his dad yet, but he maybe is getting to a place where the problem is he's been driven by the hatred of his dad.
So with his development as a person, and going from being very self-centered to acknowledging the presence of others and caring legitimately about others, that's going to kind of change how that motivation of hatred actually works. And I do think that it's just because going back home to Man City is a culmination of things happening, where literally it's, well, this is the team I grew up rooting for, the team that my dad wanted me to be a part of, my dad who hated me because I left, and he's an alcoholic, and he left my mom, and like there's a mountain of things, and this just happens to be a culmination point, I feel. And when we get to culmination points, we can go into stages of fight, flight, or fright, and we just kind of just shut down and just aren't effective or beneficial for ourselves or others. And he's borderline at the beginning of this episode into their travels to Manchester, kind of just stuck and not being productive for himself or others. And he gets some conflict resolution throughout the episode.
Yeah, and you know, during the game, and we won't spend a lot of time in the game. Like we said, they win.
They spent quite a bit of time in the game.
They do, because I think it's important. It was important for Jamie. He gets hurt, making an amazing save. Like the goalie's out of position, and he has to make this crazy save, and he hurts himself. He twists his. You're led to believe he sprains his ankle.
I've rolled many an ankle.
And soccer's interesting, or football for the Europeans or everyone else really, but Americans. But soccer's interesting because my wife, we were watching this together, and she asked, like, well, can't they just sub someone in and then sub Jamie back in when and if he's ready to return? I'm like, no, that's not how soccer works. Once they take him out, he's done.
You kick rocks.
And they only get so many subs per game. So using a substitution is a big deal, which is why they wait and play a man down.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is actually one of the cooler little things. I wonder, like, you ever wondered what that would look like in other sports, like basketball?
We get a glimpse of it in hockey. Because whenever someone gets sent to the box,
right,
you play a man down or shorthanded, and then you have a power play, which I feel like there was a college game that they had to go a man down for a period of time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, basketball.
Yeah.
There has been instances like that when you foul out enough people on your team or someone gets injured, that there's been times, because you can legally play with 3 on 5.
That's bananas.
You drop below 3 and it's an automatic forfeit. But you can play. I think there have been times when teams have played 4 on 5.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's just an interesting thing, and the whole game is meant to keep the viewer. You're supposed to be in it with Richmond. You want them to win. It's a high pressure situation, but also it's all leads up to this point where Jamie's injured and Ted comes to talk to him, as he's he's wondering if he can get back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie keeps looking back in the stands. He's looking for Dad. And Ted clearly notices and says, "Who are you looking for?" Is Dad, blah, blah, blah. And then we get to the main crux of the episode, right? Ted starts talking about forgiveness.
Oh, Ted.
Yeah. Which, in light of what is going on with Ted, is super interesting because, as we'll get to here in a little bit, forgiveness is going to be the thing that really takes center stage for him, even if they don't say that word. But it is about that because, and we'll get there. But forgiveness is brought up as this main thing with Jamie, and the idea that Ted kind of either stumbles upon or just knows is that Jamie is struggling with Pops.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's put it this way. There is a speech that May, the bar owner, gives to Ted. They go to May's bar, May's pub, and with Mom and Beard, they're playing pinball. You remember that scene?
I do remember that scene, and I also remember that pub is a lot like the Irish pub in Topeka, but it's better than
way
the Irish
better than the Irish pub in Topeka, which, by the way, Celtic Fox shout out. There actually is an Irish pub in Topeka, Kansas that is well known and kind of a big deal, but that is neither here nor there, and I wouldn't know about such things since I'm a pastor.
A pastor who has signed away all adult beverage partaking.
I did grow up in Topeka, though. And the Celtic Fox is a place there. But she says this, she quotes a poem.
She does. So last episode, she quotes Nietzsche.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, she's quoting some poetry. Who is this pub owner?
She's turning into Yoda, is she not?
Basically.
She quotes a poem by Philip Larkin, who is one of, if you know, you know, this is one of Britain's greatest 20th century poets.
That's why I don't know.
And here's the poem. I'll just read it for you. I'm going to sub out the F word for mess.
Okay.
So just know I'm paraphrasing that word. Here it is. They mess you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. But they were messed up in their turn by fools in old-style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. Now, on the surface, this is a poem that this dude wrote about just being sad and not having kids. Don't have kids. Don't do it. You're just going to pass on that messed upness. But in the context of this episode, she's giving Ted some valuable wisdom, which is that you can blame your parents for things they've done to you, ways they've broken you. But understand they were just broken by their parents. And they were broken by their parents. They were broken by their parents. That we just hand off our brokenness. So there's this. It's kind of awesome that she's using this poem. That's very like I'm assuming this is like British goth. It's a downer, but she's using it as a piece of wisdom to pass on a truth to Ted, which is, hey, your parents, they were just handed on what they were given. And it's a way for us to come around to this idea of forgiveness, to understand, especially in the case of Ted, whose mother clearly loves him, right? He's struggling, but she loves him, and she's struggling. We know she's struggling, but she clearly loves him. And so forgiveness is what I'm trying to say here is I think forgiveness is a main aspect of this episode.
It's a good one.
And with Jamie, we see this whole side story of him in the game. Ted has the speech about forgiveness. But before the game, he kind of goes off to be by himself. Roy and Keeley are worried. Roy and Keeley have a weird little storyline. We'll get to them in a minute. They follow him, and it turns out he's going home to his mom, who is, by the way, perfect. If Jamie Tart has a mom, which she does, I would have imagined it would have been just like this lady.
She was a hero.
Yeah, she's awesome. They're weirdly physical, and it weirds everybody out, which they actually show in the episode. But why I love that is because I actually know people that are like this. Their parental relationship is weirdly physical like that. Some people aren't. And when you aren't, it's weird to you. It's like, this is weird. And you could tell Roy at times is kind of weirded out by it. And it's hilarious.
And then, like, when they're leaving, Roy gets in trouble.
Because he wanted to go for one last hug with Jamie's mom. Jamie's mom, it turns out, is kind of the little nudge he needed. Because as we see, he's still missing something that he needs to do, and that's forgiveness. But she helps his confidence as she says, she has this speech to him. It's like, she understands he's tripped up on his dad. He hasn't heard from him since Wembley. And she says that you've done everything you've done. You've become who you are just to prove him wrong. And you're amazing. You're amazing. My sexy little baby.
That was a really awkward moment.
But it fits, doesn't it?
It did. Oh my goodness. There was so much that happened within Jamie's mom's house.
Her husband, or where we don't know it's her husband, but her guy.
Yes.
Perfection.
And then, like, being in Jamie's childhood bedroom.
Yeah. The poster of Roy is so stinking hilarious.
And then you close the door, and then there's a poster of Keeley.
So funny. So funny. So that's basically where we find Jamie. Why don't we go ahead and talk about Roy and Keeley since we're here on this? We seem to have rushed to this conclusion, maybe, that we thought they were back together, which this episode, immediately tells us we're wrong. Because they've got this awkward friend vibe going on.
So, they might have been labeling it friends with extras.
Yeah.
Or
let's straight up ask you. Do you think this storyline is being done well?
Yes.
You do think it's being done well?
I know people that would be like this, that did this.
Right.
And
I'm not saying on the direction. I'm saying, are they giving us enough information to be able to follow this story and it makes sense?
Yeah. It comes out like this.
All right.
And it's clear that Roy definitely wants to be back with Keeley before this episode even takes place. But Roy also doesn't want to rush things. And Roy probably is well aware that he royally messed up during Keeley's leaked video photo scandal. And so they, quote unquote, might have been taking it slow, not labeling it as anything. And whenever asked, we're friends.
Yeah.
Oi.
It feels a little herky jerky to me, but it's real. Like, yes, I know people that have had these herky jerky relationship moments. They don't. He eventually just says, "I don't want to be just friends." They're sitting on Jamie Tart's childhood bed. They point out how strange and odd how weird this all is. And when he says that, she puts her hand in his, and it appears she's about to say something. Now, Did you get the idea that the look on her face was one of, like, oh, I'm falling in love with you all over again? Or did it look like she was about to say something like she's not ready or something? I thought she had like a little negative connotation to her face when they're interrupted.
Um,
even though she had just placed her hand in his. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into her facial acting.
so I took it as either I want that too, or let's keep going slowly. I'm not quite there yet.
At any rate, they get interrupted, and I think the reason is because it's not the right time for that. This episode isn't about that.
It's not about them.
This is clearly an episode about forgiveness. And let's go back to Nate.
Which, by the way, the whole time, Roy and Keeley basically are just being like chaperones for Jamie.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and being the couple that's going to be there for this down and out friend, even though he's not really fully down and out. It's just he's in the moment.
yeah, yeah.
Back to Nate the Great.
He's having a moment. So Nate, we find out, is working at Taste of Athens as a waiter, and really like it's humorous. It's so humorous to see how much he enjoys it, and of course how good he is at it.
I related too much to Nate as a waiter. I'm like, yeah, that is highly intelligent to give peanuts at tables.
Yeah. Well, he's still being the Wonder Kid, and of course, Wonderkind. I said Wonderkind, but we're building off like maybe his dad's speech too, where we're seeing like, yeah, he's brilliant. He's one of those guys that really will be good at anything because he's brilliant. He's a genius. And I appreciate that we're seeing that even as something we would sneer at. Maybe people in high culture would sneer at, oh, he's a waiter. And remember the two people he serves in the thing, when they find out who he was, they can't even believe it wasn't that he didn't have his downfall because of drugs.
Yes. Which, as if I was Jade, I would have been like beating the manager.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to tell everyone and their mom who he is.
Is he your son? What? No. I love how taken aback he was when someone guesses that he's Nate's dad. What? No.
Doesn't even look like Nate.
Also, he must have been insulted because to be as old as you'd have to be Nate's dad, who's going prematurely gray.
Yes.
But Nate is working there. Clearly the girlfriend who is she, by the way, is she in the running for best girlfriend of all time already? Like find yourself a girl who wants you to be the best version of yourself, but isn't overbearing, but she's working behind the scenes. Like I found that to be very charming, and she's awesome. Nate's girlfriend, Jade, is the best.
She's good.
Because when she's face to face, when she motivates, it's gentle.
It is.
But she's working hard behind the scenes. Getting him to get fired, telling him to get him out of there. And
I love that she just goes and hides out.
yeah, she's listening while eating shish kebabs to conversations.
He's like, here's my girlfriend. And then she was right here. I don't know where she went.
Yeah. So some members of the team, Colin and Isaac and Will, the Kit Man, come to Taste of Athens to find Nate, to invite him back. Now, the only weird thing about this, I love it. It's a great point in the episode. It's a great scene. It's sort of weird, and I understand they can't devote time to everything, but it's sort of weird that a few episodes ago they were in such a murderous rage about Nate that they absolutely gave away a game because they were getting red cards by the hundreds.
They've had weeks.
Yeah, well, granted. So lots of time has passed.
Because they're on a huge winning streak right now.
Yeah. And they feel empathy towards Nate from whatever happened. Because he, like, by all accounts, everyone was well aware that Nate was the best manager in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Even if the dude that used to coach Richmond that's on the soccer talk show doesn't think so.
Yeah.
Everyone else thinks so. Anyways, they come by. They try to get him to come back, in which at first he seems like everybody wants me to come back. And you can see that his heart expanding as it does But then he finds out that Ted doesn't know, that the players, they didn't want to go to Ted until they knew he would come back. And that's a deal breaker for Nate, because as we find, Nate knows he needs to apologize, and he's struggling. He's struggling with that. But as the course of the episode goes on, he's watching the game. He's getting into it. He gets fired. At first, he's telling his girlfriend, I'll wait till the end of the season. But then he decides, no, I love that. I think he's saying, I love the people. I'm going back to Richmond. And he's in the middle of writing a 60-page apology to Ted that he's trying to see if he can edit down.
It's hard to edit down 60 pages, especially when you are very apologetic, which he should be.
Yeah, but in the middle of all this, he's paid a visit from Beard. Now, if we backtrack a little bit, Ted and Beard, it's really, I will say this: we're not given much in the entire show of Ted's coaching acumen. Let me tell you, there's two different kinds of great coach. Okay, in any sport, there is the coach who is a student and master of the game. You might be call them in the sporting vernacular, you might call them a great X's and O's coach. Named for drawing the way you draw it up.
Bill Belichick, great X's and O's coach. These are masters of the game. Who else would be basketball? We're talking Phil Jackson.
Well, see, I would make an argument that Phil Jackson's the other kind of great coach, but we'll get to that.
Tex Winter,
great X's and O's coach.
Triangle offense,
master of the triangle offense. But then there's a different kind of coach who's just as great. And this is the coach who's a master motivator. He knows how to press the buttons that need to be pressed, because when you coach, you understand coaching will teach you faster than anything else that everybody's different, and you have to find out what buttons they need for you to press to get them to go. And John Wooden would be a guy like that. Now, by all accounts, John Wooden was a good X's and O's guy too.
I mean, he did win like 11 national titles.
But John Wooden gets name dropped in this episode, and I think he's probably remembered more as, anytime you hear the word players coach, the term players coach, you're dealing with this guy who's like Ted. And in Ted, we get the extreme version of that. So you might have been hung up on this whole idea of, well, if Ted knows nothing about soccer, how could he be doing well? This is a real thing that can happen. Because you don't have to be a great X's and O's coach to be successful as a coach. And we get a little line from the real coach of Manchester City at the end of the match. He's like, it's not about wins and losses. It's about getting these guys to go out and be the best versions of themselves on the pitch and off. And that's the whole idea. And so we know that about Ted. We know that means something to be that guy, but we don't get to see it very often.
Yeah.
So I really, really appreciate when we do get to see Ted be the master. I don't want to call it manipulation, because it's not, but a master at coaching people and getting the right buttons pressed. And he does it with Beard.
So coaches that are more player coaches, they're good managers. They're good delegators, especially to their other coaches. They rely on their strengths to actually get the X's and O's right, in which that's what Beard does. Beard is an X's and O's guy.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's like his whole thought process is like, okay, well, we got to figure out what the strategy is going to be, and we got to do this, we got to do that. And Ted's like, I'm going to go talk to Jamie about his dad.
Right?
And so they balance each other out with that dynamic. And just to backtrack a little bit, I really love that Man City's official Twitter account tweeted out that we are playing AFC Richmond tomorrow at this time, and it's the time the Ted Lasso
did
episode
they really?
dropped.
That's awesome.
So It was a big deal.
Yeah. So in this Ted Beard scene, it's so fun to watch Ted be good at what it is he is good at, which we don't get to really, really see too often. We just get little bite-sized morsels of it. So what becomes clear is we've wondered why Ted didn't go to Nate. Clearly, Ted wanted reconciliation with Nate. We saw him talk to him in the elevator. He's being nice to him. He wants to shake hands with him at the game. The team goes to Nate before Ted, and this doesn't line up with Ted's personality until this scene. Ted's friendship with Beard is such that he knew Beard had a problem with Nate, and Ted would not make a move because it would damage Beard's effectiveness to the team.
Ted is playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers.
Yes. So Ted sets up this elaborate little thing where he comes in and he just happens to have the video queued up of Nate. I was just watching this video. He's a master. Ted's a master. I just happened to be watching this video. Come check this out. So Beard and the team had only seen this little part of the video where Nate had ripped up the sign. And Ted beckons Beard over and says, check this out. And we see what Nate's entire adventure looked like because he had to hide under the desk when the team came in to celebrate. He was there the whole time for 3 hours while the team celebrated. Then just as he's about to leave, the cleaning crew comes in. He's under there for another 2-3 hours. And we see Nate finally get out from under the desk in the middle of the night, and he's locked in the office. His legs aren't working because he's been cramped up so long. And by the way, when the cleaning crew's in there, he pushes the little waste basket out from under Ted's desk. It's just a little signal to say that, hey, buried under Nate's anger is still a pretty good heart.
Also, cleaning crew. You got to do a better job of getting into those hard to reach places.
Yeah. Never mind that you have to suspend a lot of disbelief that nobody saw he was under that desk.
Having known some cleaning crews,
yeah,
there's not much suspension.
At best, it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, that's not what this little story's about. What we see is a Nate who can be empathized with. And Ted is showing this video to Beard intentionally. And he drops this little nugget. This is great. He says, I don't know about you, coach, but I hope that all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when and if we're ever given a second chance. And then he walks out of the room singing the song that he always sings with Beard at karaoke night, apparently. Islands in the Stream.
Yeah.
With Dolly and Kenny. And he walks
the gambler.
out. And he walks out singing the line, and we rely on each other. And this pushes all the right buttons with Beard, as Beard knows what he has to do.
Which, oh my goodness, it made the best meme ever. So Beard leaves. He goes to the apartment complex of A1 Nate the Great. And Nate's all bubbly. Mm-hmm. And then he looks and he sees Beard through the glass door. And Beard does not look all bubbly. And so I saw a meme of me. It says me over Nate, and then over Beard, the next episode or the last episode of Ted Lasso.
Man. Yes. So true. Beard shows up at Nate's. This is exactly where Ted has steered him.
Mm-hmm.
And we get Beard's backstory. You've wondered, but it turns out Ted and Beard were backup kickers and punters.
Which I was rolling at that.
At whatever small college they went to, they were backup kickers and punters. That's where they became friends. They did lots of box jumps, apparently. And they go their separate ways at the end of college, where Ted finds his future wife and Michelle, but Beard goes to prison. and Beard gets mixed up in drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's paroled, he looks up Ted. And of course, we know Ted. Ted's going to be the guy that gives you a second chance. He takes you in. And then what does Beard give him for that trouble? He steals his car. And he ends up back in the police station. And if it wasn't for Ted coming down there and convincing the police that he loaned him the car, then Beard would have went back to prison. That would have been the end of all that. But instead, Ted gave Beard a second chance.
A third chance.
Yeah, a third chance. And he gave him a job and he gave him a life. And Beard announces to Nate, it is to honor that I am here to offer you a job and the life part's up to you. And he sheds the single noble tear, which I think is so dramatic and so amazing. But this was amazing. This is the pastoral part here. People who've been given amazing grace, who've been forgiven, forgive.
Sometimes they need gentle reminders to do it.
Yeah. Wonderful. Very powerful part of the episode. I loved it. Nate he's finding it hard to accept the grace. It's like, do you want to headbutt me or something? and instead,
he gets headbutted.
He immediately flips the hat around. He places his forehead against Nate's forehead and then embraces him. And It's wonderful. And it's wonderful. And we get that right before the last scene with Ted and his mom. And let's just talk about Ted and Ted's mom. The whole Kansas thing. We hit on it earlier. The oven talk. You remember when they're talking about the oven?
Yeah. And
it's played for a laugh. This has got squiggly lines, and this one will help you burn a pizza. This one, the little buzzer goes off, and you have to have Beard come over and tell you what's wrong with it. And is everything okay? What are you doing here? Like, that was so Kansan. So how it gave me all the feels of dealing with, my parents and probably you and your parents and everything. Like, something's obviously up. Why don't you just tell me? She doesn't at that point. She doesn't say what she needs, which I think is interesting and very Kansan again. They do it again with the sleeping on the couch, which we already referenced. She tells stories, but not real stories. Right? She embellishes.
He danced on stage with Bruce Springsteen.
That was Courtney Cox. He came out of the womb and asked the doctor if he's anything he needed. And I love how he does this. So he tells entertaining stories that are probably embellished is the thing that's unsaid. But when he sees his mom doing it, he's like, well, babies they don't even understand empathy. Then all of a sudden he's all rah, rah, rah. And it's hilarious because he gets so mad about it and how happy everybody is with her that we get the brief reappearance of Ted Lasso.
We do.
He throws on the visor. Someone's got to coach a football team. Which got maybe the biggest laugh out of me.
And made me want to go buy a visor.
Oh, man. So funny. But he's in this thing with his mom where we're getting I don't think we understand where this deepness is going. Mom asks Beard how Ted's doing. And it's funny. She says, still running around in circles, making sure everyone is okay without accepting a drop of help himself. Like, look, this was my grandma. This is this is people Mm-hmm. Some people, it presents like this hurt. And it's funny that mom notices it about Ted, but doesn't notice it about herself.
Oh, it's easy to remove the plank out of someone else's eye or the splinter out of someone else's eye when you have a plank in your own.
Oh, man. And then when the therapist is brought up, that therapist must be doing you good. And Ted says something about it, and she goes, "Oh, let me guess, it's all my fault."
It is actually not all her fault. Yes.
Yeah.
That is a very common mom reaction.
Oh my gosh. And it all leads to this final conversation where Ted says, "Thank you," and "mess you." If we go with what we were.
Yes.
He says a different word.
And I was like, Did you get raised by sailors out at sea, Ted?
And it's everything Ted has wanted to say. So the therapy's working, by the way.
Yeah.
He's getting it out in the open. Finally, he's saying everything he needed to say to his mom for quite some time. And he's mad. He's angry with her about doing the things they both do. This pretending that nothing's wrong, holding it all inside, not sharing it. And he basically, the culmination of that is he gets mad at her and he's angry with her for teaching him to do that. We go back to May's sharing of the poem that as parents we pass on to our kids, our brokenness. And she apologizes, right?
About time.
Yeah. And it works. She finally gets to why she's there. She says, your son misses you. I do have something to say. Your son misses you. That's why she's there. Which oh my goodness, all the feels where Ted understands this. And this is the funny thing is when you get to when you acknowledge you're hurt, like look at this chain reaction that goes on. Ted says what he needs to say. Mom hears what he needs to say, apologizes for it, takes accountability for it, then is able to get past her brokenness and say exactly why she's there. Now we're going to get to the bottom of Ted's whole deal. Ted has rejection issues. He's afraid of being abandoned.
He is.
And the divorce to his wife and this split parenting thing has given him an excuse to distance himself from his son.
Yeah, and coaching overseas.
Yeah, and he dearly loves him, and he says, I miss him too. But that's when the truth comes out. He says he's afraid to get close to him because he knows he's going to leave, because that's what children do.
It is what children do. And, I mean, if we go back in Ted's story a little bit, and even during the mess you scene with Mom, he brings up his dad.
Yeah.
That relationship. Dad's suddenly gone because Dad committed suicide. I mean, Ted, all the meaningful relationships, they go away. Yeah. And so it's real easy to get in the mindset of, well, everyone's going to leave me and no one really cares that deeply about me. And so it's just better to keep people arm's length or further away.
Yeah. And we understand that this is a form of not engaging.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pulling back, which is what a lot of us do. When it comes to our brokenness, what we do is we stop engaging. Okay? Hold on to that, because I want to ask Cody a question. This show delves a lot into mental health. Is it, and if you don't know, Cody works in mental health. He's a pastor, but he's also now a master's of social work.
Yeah, right? I got my MSW.
Yeah.
And still have to take the test for an LMSW.
Yeah, so he works for the local mental health center. Does this show mostly get right this mental health stuff? Are they a champion for this, first of all, and do they get it right?
So May is Mental Health Month, by the way. But I will say that I do think, for the most part, they do a good job portraying mental health, the way that like diagnoses come across, the way that the stigma within the community or collective conscious as a whole is still that, like, not everyone is on board with mental health. If you have panic attacks, it's a sign of weakness, and you get all that through the Ted story, even though we can say it's not unheard of. It's actually quite common that people have such anxiety, such levels of depression, that they go through this, and that someone being willing to seek out help through a therapist is a really strong move to make. The issues, the unresolved issues, especially around a traumatic event like suddenly losing a parent for Ted. Um, yeah, that's definitely a way that it could present itself within the adult version of an individual. Um, and so all the other characters that have these moments that of like even with Colin um, and other players that like I think the show is at least very mental health aware and tries to be a good advocate of, hey, it's okay if you're not okay, and it's okay to get help, to lean on others, to reach out to others. Don't be an island unto yourself.
Yeah. Islands in the stream. We
That
rely
is
on each other.
what we are.
Yeah. I think I've never watched a show on TV that I was this entertained by. I laugh, I cry. I cried like a baby the last 2 episodes in certain scenes. But is also, when I watch it, is cathartic.
Yeah. And I mean, the show has dealt with some very heavy topics over its 3 years on TV or on Apple TV. And so actually being able to process and move through it. And with one or more of their storylines, you may have really deeply connected with characters. And so seeing them move through it might have given some people some insights into what they can do and how they can process and move on.
Yeah. So I think we should take the show's urging. It's almost as if Ted Lasso is coaching us in a way. So I would leave and with 1 episode left, and I'm very sad that it seems like this will be the end of the show. Although they haven't officially said that, but wow, this clearly looks like it's moving to a point where Ted's going home.
Oh, I thought they had said that.
They haven't officially said that. Everyone just assumes. Because some of the things that that Jason Sudeikis has said and all this, there's an assumption, but nobody's saying it. It's almost like Apple TV doesn't want you. Apple TV's like in the boardrooms and the back rooms trying to make this thing keep going because they don't want to lose it.
Yeah, although I will say some of my favorite TV shows, like I can think of Scrubs. It went like I think 8 seasons before it switched networks and then tried to do like the Frasier spinoff, but with it still being called Scrubs. So there was a 9th season. There's times that shows go on too long. And so if you stop when you're on top, it's kind of like John Elway exiting after he won his Super Bowls. He's like, GOAT, I'm gone. Or when MJ retired the second time. He won his championship, second three-peat. GOAT, I'm gone.
But you weren't disappointed? You weren't sad?
Oh, it's okay to be very sad. But looking back, I really wish MJ would not have come out of retirement a second time and went to the Wizards.
That's true.
Yeah. And so
he tarnished a little bit.
And so if you go out on top, you think very highly and fondly looking back.
I will say this. If you feel like this with the show too, that it's been cathartic to you and you have connected with certain things that the characters have had to deal with, then I would advise you to take the coaching of the show, take it, get a therapist, say the things that need to be said to your people, forgive them, reconnect with them, be open and honest, but don't hold in like Kansas people. We spent the whole episode talking about Ted's mom and Kansas people. It's really not good for you to hold all that in.
No, and forgiveness not only towards others, but towards yourself. Which Ted talks about with Jamie. Like, it's something for you as well. It's not just for your dad. Like, forgiveness helps you move on, helps you move through.
Yeah.
And so be forgiving.
So good. Such a great episode. How many mustaches out of 10? Do you even want to do a winner and loser?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I actually wrote it down this time.
All right. Who's the winner of the episode?
Teddy Lasso.
Wow. How long has it been?
It definitely wasn't last week because he was hardly in the episode. So, yeah, Ted Lasso definitely wins the episode for me. He has these brilliant moves, and he with not only the players but the coaches, and then he has these great talks with the players, and he finally is able to bust through Dottie's facade, only to come to the realization, maybe I should be practicing what I preach.
Yeah. I think it's a good pick. I'm going to say, because this is one of the most entertaining shows I've ever watched, but I also get something out of it emotionally. I think the viewer is the winner this episode.
Oh, snap.
I think we're the winner. I think we're the winner, that we get to watch this, that we get to talk about these things, and it's just amazing. Who's the loser of the episode?
Okay. So, just like Aerosmith fans,
Oh, boy.
the manager of Taste of Athens gets jaded. And so the manager's the loser. He
loses his best man.
He has to fire Nate the Great.
And how long, honestly, how long's Nate going to have a plum job and Jade's going to continue working at Taste of Athens?
So, I mean, shoot, he might lose his best hostess.
She clearly hates her job. She's like, I don't think I've ever come home and talked about work.
And like, I was left wondering, what does she have to blackmail the manager with?
Yeah, right. Oh, man. Goodness. Well, this was a great episode. How many? I didn't give you a loser.
Yeah.
I might agree with the restaurant manager being the loser of the episode. I don't know. I was going to say Beard, just because this episode highlights just how good it is when he gets a little bit of the spotlight, even for a moment. His character is kind of rich. I think, a lot of people didn't like that episode last season where it was an all Beard episode, but I loved it. I think he's a deep character, and boy, giving him this backstory this week, I just want more, but we're not going to get more because the show's not about him.
I will say, if you live in the greater Kansas City area and you want to support the Big Slick, Arthur Bryant's Barbecue is offering a buffet style dinner with the guy that plays Coach Beard.
Oh, wow.
His name is, of course, Brendan Hunt, and it's a private party at Arthur Bryant's.
Oh, my goodness.
You can buy tickets. They are a few doll hairs.
Yeah. Big Slick is a I think it started off as maybe a golf tournament charity. It's Jason Sudeikis, Paul Rudd.
And now they play baseball at Kaufman.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. I'd like to win that. That'd be fun. All right. Hey, we enjoyed talking about this episode.
I give it 9 mustaches.
Oh, yeah. Mustaches. 9. I'm going to go 9. I think I gave Amsterdam 9.5. This one was very good. This is very, very good. It's a good thing you're here, Cody.
Yeah.
I'd forget to do things all the time.
Right back at you.
All right. We love you guys. We hope you're enjoying Ted Lasso. Be thinking about what you want to watch next. Do a watch alongs with next. We love breaking these down for you guys and talking about the themes throughout. We'll see you next time.